Has everyone here watched The Princess Diaries? The movie in which Anne Hathaway portrays a messy, clumsy teen girl who finds out she's the princess of a small European state. She's then thrown into this world she knows nothing of, and she's asked to prove she has what it takes. And as part of her trial, she undergoes the famous 2000s movie makeover, in which the ugly girl takes off her glasses, straightens her hair, puts on a trendy outfit, and suddenly, she's beautiful. But was she ever actually ugly, or is that just something we were made believe thanks to beauty standards, pop culture, and trends? Fashion is more than clothes. Fashion is more than fabric. What we wear shapes how we see ourselves and how others see us. We believe we have control over our choices, and when it comes to something as personal as your style, it feels wrong to contradict that belief. But what if our fashion choices weren't dictated by us? If you see a shirt you like, you think you bought it because you like the fit. Or if you bought a pair of new sneakers, you think it's because you saw them and thought, wow, those are cool. However, some philosophers, called determinists, believe personal choice has very little to do with it. A simple way of understanding this is through a formula. Every action is the result of a belief, a desire, and a temperament. A determinist would argue that if you choose to wear a certain jacket on a day, it's because of the belief that it's cold, the desire to be warm, and the temperament to be comfortable. Therefore, that decision was predetermined by the moments that led up to it, and not necessarily by this illusion of free will. Determinists also claim that marketing, trends, our past, our childhood, and every moment that has led up to now has influenced you to dress in the way which you do. And with the current flooding of media and information that we are receiving on a daily basis, this perspective takes a stronger hold. For example, the Birkenstock Boston clog. It was ugly and now it's cool. Why? Because the internet said so. This shoe became part of a greater trend of laid-back fashion, and soon it left our screens and jumped into the lives of celebrities, and eventually ours. However, the only reason this shoe was able to find footing was due to human susceptibility to trends. To understand the psychology behind this, let's do a quick experiment. On the screen, you see two boxes. On the left hand, a single line. On the right hand, you see three lines labeled A, B, and C. I'm going to call out A, B, and C, and when you hear the line you think matches the single line, please raise your hand. Who thinks it's A? Who thinks it's B? And who thinks it's C? Thank you, that was the correct answer. Now, let's talk about what we just did. The experiment we just replicated was originally conducted in the 1950s by psychologist Solomon Asch in Swarthmore University College. In this experiment, he put together 6 people, 5 actors and 1 unaware participant, and he gave them the same images that I just showed you. The only difference was that the actors were instructed to, at first, give the correct answer, but as the experiment went on, to deliberately answer incorrectly. What was interesting was that the participant, although seeing the obvious mistake, was more likely to conform to the group's wrong answers than to answer correctly by themselves. And by the end of the experiment, 32% conformed multiple times, 75% conformed at least once, and only 25% never conformed at all. And this reveals a fundamental truth about humanity. We are deeply influenced by those around us, even when we know better. And when it comes to fashion, that has a huge role in the way that trends work. This can also be examined through the bandwagon effect. The idea that when we see more people wear something, we are more likely to accept it as stylish. For example, the short-lived revival of the Y2K aesthetic among Gen Z. The rise in metallics and in low-rise jeans and halter tops and pointy shoes and chunky sneakers have all made our fashion look very similar to that of the beginning of the millennium. The irony is that most of our generation, if not all, is too young to have remembered what it was to live through that stage in fashion. However, as nostalgia has been creeping into our feeds through old magazines of Kate Moss and the increasing popularity of 90s rom-coms, we have started dressing in the same way as the people in the media we consume dress. Marketing and algorithms are also culprits in our lack of freedom when it comes to fashion. Due to the way that algorithms work, the same content that is popular will keep getting pushed into our feeds, whether we like it or not. Originally, we were able to select the people we wanted to follow and had a more tailored view of what the internet had to offer us. However, as social media got more algorithmic, we all began consuming the same type of media. And soon enough, this meant that all our closets looked the same as well. Before the algorithm was smart enough to detect trends and push them, the internet was kept running due to hashtags. And hashtags were a way in which people were able to get more tailored views of what the internet had. The famous hashtag OOTD, or outfit of the day, was born from an era in which people were carefully curating their feeds to see inspiration to things that they actually liked. However, as brands create this artificial demand for things that they need to sell, and influencers and the algorithm push these products into our baskets, making us believe that we chose them, we lose track of what we really like. And this is why determinists believe that there is no free will in fashion. Because if there were free will, then we wouldn't be as easily influenced by all of the things around us. In the end, we're almost like chess pieces on a chessboard, and we're being controlled by external forces. But let's think about the German shoe again. The Boston clog was considered ugly, impractical, or simply unfashionable for a very long time. However, as soon as this shoe started getting traction online and it became a trend, all of those things disappeared. And suddenly, this shoe was no longer any of that. It was cool and comfortable and creative. And this is a clear example because trends are made for revenue. They're made for profit. They're not natural. Fashion cycles don't just occur. And in the case of the Boston clog, this led to a direct increase in net sales for Birkenstock of a 1,214% increase since 2018 values. However, social media is not the only reason that we're so easily influenced. It's also about society. In the Victorian era, women were more prone to wear corsets because they were a symbol of status. Nowadays, the quote, clean girl aesthetic is made from the domination of minimalism in our society. And both of these trends reveal broader political ideals that we have in our societies. For example, the ideals of wellness and understated luxury are represented through the clean girl aesthetic. Now, it is true that there are some subcultures and influencers that have been pushing back against what's mainstream. For example, the idea of slow fashion or de-influencing has been gaining popularity. And it is true that through this de-influencing and slow fashion, you help the environment by buying less from fast fashion brands. And in the end, you end up buying things that truthfully speak more to you. And although it is true that many argue that by reclaiming agency of your purchases, you end up buying things that are more interesting and therefore that you truly like, however, you're still being influenced by the media you're consuming, your past, your biology, your cultural norms, your parents, where you grew up. And so there really is no free will in fashion. And if you don't believe me, think about this. Remember that movie we were talking about at the beginning? Well, this movie, like many others from the time, claimed that curly hair was messy or ungroomed and unprofessional. And for a really long time, those ideals were reflected in our society. And it's only been till recently that we've started going back against this, and people have started using their natural hair and their natural curls and understanding that they are polished and they are professional. There are some subcultures such as punk and avant-garde who have historically been known for pushing back against what's mainstream and going against the flow. And although it is true that historically they have been very influential in the fashion industry, recently even this rebellion has been co-opted as the idea of being cool or separate from the masses becomes an aesthetic. So in the end, it just seems like it's resisting one influence while following another one. But what does this mean for our day-to-day lives? Because if we're being honest, walking around with this impending doom that nothing that we do is up to us is a depressing way to lead our lives. The reality is that we live in a world that has been designed to make us feel like we do have free will. And we should take advantage of that whenever we can. However, understanding the broader implications behind what we wear and why we choose to wear it will allow us to make more conscious decisions that would otherwise feel arbitrary. So, was the ugly girl actually ugly? I'd argue she wasn't. I think it was just a narrative constructed and sold to us. Sure, Mia Thermopolis was not the most polished teenager. But then again, who knows who they are or what they like at 15? At that age, we're still trying to figure ourselves out. Yet the world is constantly trying to tell us who we need to be. And if something as simple as a makeover we saw in a movie when we were young shaped our whole ideals of beauty, then what does that have to say about the way we view fashion? So, next time you're choosing what you're going to wear for the day, or perhaps you're buying a new shirt, ask yourself, are you wearing it because you truly like it, or because somebody told you it was cool? Thank you.